The galaxy hums, not with the gentle thrum of starlight, but with the low, resonant frequency of ancient empires grinding against each other across the void. It is a place of cold equations and colder politics, where life is measured in resource yields and strategic value. Planets are catalogued, categorized, and often discarded. And Earth? Earth was discarded long before humanity even knew the stars held neighbors to the Cathar hegemony, a sprawling crystalline civilization whose philosophy revered order, predictability, and the serene hum of perfectly calibrated machinery. Earth was an anomaly, a statistical error, a cosmic joke. Scans from their long-range probes, centuries ago, painted a picture of utter desolation, a world choked by its own atmospheric poisons, racked by violent tectonic spasms, bathed in lethal radiation from a hyperactive star, and teeming with biological horrors that defied classification. They named it Cathortho, the unmaking place. A cautionary tale whispered in Cathar nurseries, beware the world that consumes itself. They never sent boots to its surface. Why would they? It was a wasteland, a graveyard, a place where only death thrived. They were wrong. Humanity didn't just survive Earth, they forged themselves upon it. Centuries passed. Humanity clawed its way into the stars, not with the sleek, silent grace of the Cathar, but with the roaring, jury-rigged fury of survivors. Their ships were patchwork marvels of scavenged alloys and desperate ingenuity, their colonies carved into asteroid belts and the frozen moons of gas giants. They were the galaxy's underdogs, the scrappy newcomers dismissed as primitive, chaotic, and dangerously unstable. The Cathar watched them with detached curiosity, like scientists observing particularly aggressive insects in a terrarium. Fascinating, they thought, how such fragile biology persists in such disorder. Then came the Veln. Not an empire, but a ravenous tide. A biomechanical swarm that consumed star systems, stripping them bare of matter and energy, leaving only cold, dead husks in their wake. The Cathar hegemony, for all its crystalline perfection, found its ordered legions shattered before the Veln's relentless, adaptive onslaught. Their defenses, elegant and precise, were overwhelmed by sheer brutal numbers and terrifying biological weaponry that corroded their very ships. Desperation, a concept the Cathar had long considered obsolete, began to gnaw at their collective psyche. Their grand strategos, Kalen Vor, a being whose crystalline form shimmered with the cold light of 1,000 calculations, stood before the Hegemony Council. His voice, synthesized through resonant harmonics, cut through the chamber's usual serene hum. Elara Vance is inefficient, Vor stated, the word tasting like ash, but their consumption rate exceeds our predictive models by 37 points. A ripple of dissonance passed through the council. Unconventional? The very word was an affront to their principles. There is one possibility, Vor continued, his facets glinting with reluctant acknowledgement. The Terrans, the inhabitants of Cathar. A collective shudder, almost imperceptible, ran through the chamber. The Wastelanders. The chaotic, unpredictable primitives. They possess resilience, Vor conceded, the admission grating. Their historical data, though fragmented and illogical, suggests an unparalleled capacity for adaptation under extreme duress. Their biological profiles indicate robustness against environmental extremes we deem unsurvivable. And their recent skirmishes with Velan scout elements, while tactically unsound, demonstrated a disturbingly high kill ratio. Silence. Heavy. Judgmental. Propose, intoned the eldest counselor, her voice like grinding glaciers. We offer them a pact, Vor said. Protection. Technology. A place within the hegemony's sphere. In return, they fight. They bleed. They die, holding the line where our own forces falter. They are expendable assets, perfectly suited for the chaos of the Velan front. The council deliberated. The logic was cold, brutal, and undeniable. The Wastelanders were already dying out there. Better they die usefully. On the scarred surface of Mars, in the sprawling, pressurized warren known as New Ares, Captain Aris Thorne watched the Cathar delegation descend. Their ship, the harmony of ordered paths, was a thing of impossible grace, a seamless, multifaceted crystal that seemed to drink the weak Martian sunlight rather than reflect it. It hovered silently over the landing pad, a stark contrast to the grimy, riveted bulk of the human frigate Mars's Fury parked nearby, its hull patched with plates scavenged from a dozen different wrecks. Thorne adjusted the worn leather strap of his respirator, the familiar rasp of his own breath a counterpoint to the low thrum of the Cathar vessel. He was a man carved from the same rock as Mars itself, hard angles, eyes the color of rusted iron, and a network of scars mapping a lifetime of close calls. He'd lost his first command, the Odyssey, to a Veln bioplague that ate through the hull like acid. He'd lost his brother on Luna during the Cathar's initial dismissive assessment of human space. He knew what the galaxy thought of them, Wastelander. Beside him stood Dr. Elara Vance, the lead xenolinguist and cultural liaison. Her face was pale, etched with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with a fierce analytical intelligence. She clutched a data slate like a shield. "They're early," she murmured, her voice tight. Protocol dictated a 3-hour window for atmospheric scrubbing. Protocols for people who think the rules apply to them. Thorne grunted, never taking his eyes off the descending ramp. "The Cathar don't do early. They do precise. Something's got them rattled." The ramp lowered. 3 Cathar emerged. Tall, slender beings encased in articulated crystalline carapaces that shifted subtly in hue, reflecting their internal state, currently a cool, calculating blue. Their faces were smooth planes, devoid of features save for multifaceted eyes that glowed with soft internal light. They moved with unnerving silence and perfect synchronization. The lead Kiftar, designated Overseer Kalen Vor by the human comms, stopped before Thorne. Its voice, translated through a small device on its chest, was devoid of inflection, yet carried immense weight. "Captain Aris Thorne, we represent the Cathar hegemony. We come to offer opportunity." Thorne didn't salute. He just stared, his jaw set. "Opportunity usually costs blood. Overseer, whose are you planning to spend?" Vor's facets flickered, a micro-expression of surprise. "Annoyance. Your species possesses unique attributes suited to the current challenge posed by the Velen incursion. The hegemony proposes a mutual defense accord. We provide advanced shielding, energy weapons, and logistical support. You provide frontline engagement." "Frontline engagement," Thorne repeated flatly. "You mean cannon fodder?" "The terminology is crude, but functionally accurate," Vor replied, its voice unchanged. "Your historical resilience against Corvathilad's extremes suggests a high probability of survival in Velen combat zones where hegemony forces experience suboptimal performance." They called Earth a wasteland, Thorne thought, the old familiar rage a cold ember in his gut. "They think we're just tough cockroaches." He glanced at Elara. Her knuckles were white on the data slate. She'd spent years trying to bridge the cultural chasm, only to be met with Cathar condescension wrapped in clinical observation. "And if we say no?" Thorne asked, his voice low. Vor tilted its head, a gesture that might have been pity or perhaps just data recalibration. "The Velen consume all. Your scattered colonies, your fragile habitats. They will be erased. The hegemony offers the only viable path to continued existence. Consider it." Logical. The offer hung in the thin Martian air, heavy with unspoken threat and desperate hope. The Thorne knew the truth. The human fleet was outgunned, outmaneuvered, and running on fumes. Saying no meant annihilation. Saying yes meant becoming the Capta's disposable shock troops, dying in droves to buy time for their pristine crystal cities. He looked past Vor towards the horizon where the skeletal remains of old Ares city clawed at the sky, a monument to human ambition and fragility. He thought of the billions back on Earth, still rebuilding, still breathing that toxic air, still living on the world the galaxy called a tomb. They hadn't forged themselves in comfort. They'd forged themselves in fire, ice, radiation, and despair, and they were still here. "Logic," Thorne said, meeting Vor's multifaceted gaze, "isn't the only thing that keeps us alive, Overseer, but we'll take your deal. For now." He extended a hand, calloused and scarred. "Show us the weapons." Vulture didn't take the hand. It simply nodded, its facets shifting to a neutral gray. Efficiency dictates immediate deployment. Your first assignment, the Helios Drift. A critical resource node currently under Vale assault. Hegemony forces are regrouping. Retreating. Thorne translated silently. They're running, and they want us to hold the door. He turned to Elara, his voice dropping. Get the fleet ready, Doc. Full combat loadout. Scavenge whatever we can from the Fury's junk pile. As the Cathar turned to reboard their impossibly clean ship, Elara leaned close, her voice a desperate whisper only he could hear. Aris, their scans. The deep scans they ran on Earth centuries ago. They missed something. Something big. Buried deep. I've been cross-referencing their old data with our geological surveys. There are energy signatures, structures, impossible structures beneath the crust. They called it a wasteland. But it's not empty. Thorne froze. The ember in his gut flared into a white-hot coal. Impossible structures. On Earth. The one place the Cathar deemed utterly worthless. The implications crashed over him like a tidal wave. If the Cathar didn't know, if humanity didn't know, what else had they missed? What had they been forging on all this time without even realizing it? Before he could process it, before he could ask Elara more, the comms officer's voice crackled in his ear, sharp with panic. Captain! Incoming transmission from Helios Drift. It's not the Velm. It's the Cathar. Their fleet. They're bombarding the drift. They're glassing it. Thorne's blood ran cold. Glassing. The Helios Drift was a human mining outpost. Hundreds of civilians. He whirled back towards the harmony of ordered paths, just as its crystalline hull began to glow with building energy. Vor stood at the top of the ramp, its facets now blazing a cold, merciless white. The resource node is compromised. Verdress' translated voice stated, devoid of any emotion, any hint of the atrocity it was about to commit. Containment protocol dictates sterilization. Human presence is inefficient for salvage operations post-Velen engagement. Your deployment parameters are adjusted. Proceed to Helios Drift. Secure the perimeter after sterilization is complete. Your resilience will be tested. The Cathar ship's main weapon, a lance of pure coherent light, lanced out, silent and devastating, streaking towards the distant Helios Drift. Thorne could only watch, helpless as the pinpoint of light struck the asteroid cluster, blossoming into a silent, sun-bright fireball that consumed everything. Men, women, children, gone, erased, because they were inefficient. The betrayal was absolute. The Cathar hadn't just used them. They'd sacrificed humans without a second thought. They saw Earth as a wasteland, and its children as equally disposable. As the fireball faded, leaving only expanding debris and chilling silence, Thorne's hand clenched into a fist so tight his knuckles cracked. The ember of rage wasn't just hot anymore. It was molten, and it had a target. He looked at Elara, her face ashen with horror. He looked at the smoldering ruin where Helios Drift had been. He thought of the impossible structures beneath Earth's scarred skin. The Cathar called Earth a wasteland. They were about to learn what humanity had truly forged in the fires of that wasteland. And it wasn't just resilience. It was vengeance. The Mars Fury limped through the debris field that was once the Helios Drift. Silence reigned on the bridge, thick and suffocating, broken only by the low hum of the engines and the ragged breathing of the crew. The viewport showed only twisted metal, frozen corpses tumbling in the void, and the lingering thermal bloom of the Cathar's sterilization beam. Captain Aris Thorne stood rigid at the command chair, his face a mask of stone, but his eyes burned with a cold, focused fury that terrified even his veteran crew. Dr. Elara Vance sat hunched over her console, her fingers flying across the screen, pulling up fragmented sensor logs, comms intercepts, anything that could explain the Cathar's monstrous act. Her usual analytical calm was shattered, replaced by a trembling intensity. It wasn't just containment, Aris, she whispered, her voice raw. The Velan hadn't even reached the drift. The Cathar fleet was the only hostile presence. They lied. They used the Velan as an excuse to eliminate us. Thorne didn't look at her. His gaze remained fixed on the carnage outside. They see us as vermin. Elara, vermin to be exterminated when convenient. The pact was never about alliance. It was about using us as a buffer until they decided we were more trouble than we were worth. He finally turned, his rust-colored eyes locking onto hers. What did you find about Earth? The structures? Elara swallowed hard, pulling up a complex schematic overlaid on a deep geological map of Earth. It's fragmented. The Cathar's initial scans were superficial, focused on surface toxicity and atmospheric composition. They dismissed the planet as geologically unstable and biologically hostile. But our deep core probes, they've detected anomalous energy signatures. Not natural, not human. Massive. Concentrated in the Mariana Trench, the Siberian Traps, the Deccan Plateau, ancient impact sites, supervolcanic calderas, places of extreme planetary trauma. She zoomed in on a cross-section. The signatures resonate with frequencies we've only seen in theoretical physics papers. They're dampening the very tectonic stresses the Cathar cited as proof of Earth's instability. They're not just in the crust, they're stabilizing it against forces that should have shattered the planet eons ago. Thorne frowned. Stabilizing? Why? And who built them? That's the terrifying part, Elara said, her voice dropping to a near-inaudible whisper. The energy patterns, they match residual traces found in the oldest human artifacts. Cave paintings depicting impossible geometries, myths of world serpents sleeping beneath the mountains. The builders, Aris, I think they were us, or something that became us, something that forged humanity on Earth, using the planet's own violent energy as a crucible. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just survived Earth's hellscapes. They were the product of a deliberate ancient process. Earth wasn't a wasteland. It was a forge, and humanity was the blade being tempered in its fires. The Cathar, with their sterile scans and rigid logic, had looked at the anvil and seen only scrap metal. A proximity alarm blared, shattering the grim revelation. The Cathar frigate, sleek and predatory, detached from the main fleet that had just committed the atrocity, was vectoring towards them. "Hail them," Thorne ordered, his voice dangerously calm. The Cathar commander's face appeared on the main screen. Overseer Vor. His facets were a cool, unrateable blue. "Captain Thorne, your vessel is operating outside designated parameters. Return to New Ares immediately for debriefing and reassignment." "Debriefing?" Thorne's voice was ice. "You just murdered hundreds of my people, last a civilian outpost. And you want me to debrief? Collateral damage is regrettable but necessary in strategic calculus," Vor stated, his tone unchanged. The Helios drift was compromised. Human presence introduced unacceptable variables. Your emotional response is inefficient. Return to base. Inefficient. Thorne leaned forward, his knuckles white on the armrests. You call genocide inefficient. You call us inefficient. You looked at Earth and saw Wasteland. Poor Saul. You looked at us and saw vermin. But you were wrong. You were blind, and your blindness just signed your death warrant. Vorvax's facets flickered. A brief pulse of crimson, surprise, alarm. "Threats are illogical, Captain. Comply." Thorne didn't answer. He slammed his fist down on the comm override. "All hands. Battle stations. Target that Kaffa frigate. Give me everything we've got. The jury-rigged plasma cannons. The scrap metal railguns. The damn wrenches if you have to throw them. Show them what inefficient looks like." The Mars Fury, a ship held together by hope and duct tape, roared to life. Its mismatched weapons spat fire. Crude plasma bolts, hypervelocity slugs of scavenged steel, even experimental sonic emitters that vibrated at frequencies designed to shatter crystalline structures. It was chaotic, messy, and utterly unpredictable. The Kotuther frigate, expecting precise, predictable maneuvers, was caught off guard. Its elegant shields, designed to deflect coherent energy beams, flickered and buckled under the barrage of kinetic and sonic impacts. Cracks spiderwebbed across its crystalline hull. On the Katsifar bridge, Overseer Vor watched the damage reports flood in. His internal harmonics, usually a serene hum, vibrated with dissonance. Illogical, chaotic, inefficient. Yet, effective. The human vessel, a patchwork monstrosity, was hurting his ship. How? Their tactics defied all strategic models. They weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to hurt, to make him pay. Evasive pattern Delta 7. Vor commanded, his voice tight with the unfamiliar strain of urgency. Focus shield harmonics on the port flank. Target their primary plasma emitter. But the Mars Fury didn't follow the expected evasion pattern. Thorne, anticipating the Cathar's predictable counter, had already veered hard starboard, bringing his secondary railgun battery to bear on the Cathar's vulnerable engine nacelles, a weak point. Elara had theorized based on their crystalline lattice structure. A hail of tungsten slugs, accelerated to near relativistic speeds, slammed into the nacelles. The crystalline structure, stressed beyond its harmonic tolerance, shattered with a sound like a million breaking chandeliers. The frigate lurched violently, venting atmosphere and energy. Vor stared at the catastrophic damage. His ship, a masterpiece of Cathar engineering, was being torn apart by scrap metal and human rage. The dissonance within him grew louder, more painful. This should not be possible. They are wastelanders. They are chaos. Chaos cannot defeat order. He activated the emergency comm. Hegemony command. Request immediate support. The Terran vessel Mars Fury has turned hostile. They are exhibiting extreme aggression. Attack on the Mars Fury. Thorne watched the crippled Cathar frigate drift. He could finish it. One more salvo, but the main Cathar fleet was turning, their weapons powering up. Finishing Var meant dying here, now, and he had a bigger target. Helm, Thorne ordered, his voice rough but steady. Plot a course for Sol maximum burn. We're going home. Elara looked up, startled. Earth? Aris, it's crawling with Cathar observation posts. They'll shoot us down before we hit the atmosphere. Let them try, Thorne said, a grim smile touching his lips. They think Earth is a wasteland. Let's show them what happens when you try to invade a forge. The journey back to Sol was a tense, silent race against time. The Cathar fleet, furious and humiliated, pursued relentlessly. But the Mars Fury, designed for the brutal realities of the asteroid belts and salvage yards, was surprisingly agile in the cluttered space near the gas giants. Thorne used Jupiter's immense gravity well and radiation belts as cover, playing a deadly game of cat and mouse, losing pursuers to navigational errors and unexpected micrometeoroid showers. He wasn't just running, he was leading them towards something. On Earth, the Cathar presence was minimal. A few automated sensor buoys and a single small observation station in high orbit, monitoring the uninhabitable planet with detached curiosity. They saw the toxic clouds, the raging storms, the radiation spikes. They saw nothing of value, they saw only Kyvorot. The Mars Fury screamed into Earth's upper atmosphere. Heat shields glowing cherry red, alarms blaring as the ship groaned under the stress. Below, the planet unfolded in all its terrifying, vibrant glory. Oceans churning under violent storms, continents scarred by volcanoes and earthquakes. The very air thick with the chemical tang of a world that refused to die. Scans show the Cathar observation station powering up weapons. The comms officer yelled, "They're hailing, demanding we surrender or be destroyed." Thorne ignored them. Elara, pinpoint those energy signatures. The biggest one. The Mariana Trench. Alara's fingers flew. Got it? It's pulsing? Reacting to our approach. To the Cathar weapons lock. As if on cue, the Cathar station fired. A searing beam of energy lanced down towards the Mars's Fury. But before it could strike, the ocean exploded. Not with water, but with light. A colossal column of pure white energy erupted from the depths of the Mariana Trench. A geyser of raw power that dwarfed the Cathar beam. It struck the observation station not with destructive force but with a wave of resonance. The crystalline structure of the station didn't shatter. It unraveled. Its perfect harmonics were disrupted, its internal order collapsing into chaotic feedback. The station didn't explode, it simply dissolved into shimmering dust, scattered by the solar wind. Silence. Utter, profound silence on the bridge of the Mars Fury. The crew stared, slack-jawed, at the viewport where the Qatar station had been. Thorne slowly turned to Elara. "What was that?" Alara's eyes were wide with awe and terror. It's awake. The Forge. It's awake, and it doesn't like intruders." Before anyone could process this, the main Cathar fleet emerged from warp at the edge of the Sol system. Dozens of crystalline warships, led by the massive command vessel Will of Perfect Order, filled the void. Overseer Vor's face appeared on every screen, his facets blazing crimson with fury and something else. Fear. "Terrans!" His voice boomed, stripped of its usual calm, laced with static. "You have activated a planetary defense system. This is an act of war against the hegemony. Stand down immediately, or face total annihilation." Thorne stood tall in the center of his battered bridge, the chaotic beauty of his wounded Earth filling the viewport behind him. He activated the ship-wide comm, his voice ringing with a conviction that silenced the alarms. "Annihilation?" Thorne's laugh was harsh, echoing in the sudden quiet. "You don't get it, do you, Vor? You looked at Earth and saw a wasteland. You looked at us and saw vermin. But you were wrong. This planet isn't dead, it's alive, and it's been forging us for millennia. You think your crystals are perfect? Your order is supreme? You're standing on the anvil, Overseer, and the hammer is about to fall." He turned to his helm officer. "Take us down, all the way, to the surface, to the heart of the Forge." As the Mars Fury plunged deeper into the turbulent atmosphere, heading towards the epicenter of the energy pulse in the Pacific, the Cathar fleet hesitated. Their sensors were going wild, detecting impossible energy levels, gravitational anomalies, and a resonance that threatened to shatter their very ships just by proximity. Vor's orders were clear: destroy the Terrans. But the planet itself was now an active, hostile entity. Vor made his decision. All vessels. Concentrated fire on the Terran vessel. Ignore planetary interference. Obliterate them before they reach the source. The Cathar fleet opened fire. A storm of coherent energy beams lanced towards the descending Mars Fury, but Earth answered. The energy pulse from the Mariana Trench didn't just defend, it amplified. It surged upwards, not as a single beam, but as a vast shimmering dome of resonant energy that enveloped the entire planet. The cadaver beams struck the dome and didn't penetrate. Instead, they were absorbed, their energy feeding the dome, making it brighter, stronger. Then the dome pulsed. It wasn't an explosion. It was a wave of pure, disruptive resonance that washed outwards through the Sol system. Every Cathar ship within range shuddered violently. Cracks appeared in their crystalline hulls. Internal systems overloaded. Harmonic stabilizers failed. Ships that had sailed the galaxy for centuries began to come apart at the molecular level, their perfect order collapsing into chaotic ruin. On the bridge of the Will of Perfect Order, Overseer Vor watched in utter horror as his fleet disintegrated around him. His own ship groaned, facets fracturing, internal lights flickering erratically. The serene hum of his civilization was replaced by a cacophony of shattering crystal and screaming harmonics. He looked at the viewscreen, at the small, defiant human ship vanishing into the storm clouds of the world they called home. The world his people had dismissed as a tomb, and in that moment of utter shattering defeat, a devastating revelation struck him with the force of a supernova. It wasn't just the planetary defense system, it was the humans, their chaotic biology, their unpredictable tactics, their very existence on this world. They weren't just surviving the Forge. They were part of it. Their rage, their desperation, their indomitable will, it was fueling the resonance. The Cathar hadn't just underestimated a planet, they had underestimated the symbiosis between the planet and its children. They had called Earth a wasteland, but they had walked into the heart of a living weapon, and its wielders were the very vermin they sought to exterminate. As his ship began to break apart, Varada's final synthesized thought wasn't of strategy or logic. It was a single echoing word, filled with a terror he had never known. Forged. The Mars Fury didn't land. It couldn't. The resonant energy field, now a permanent, shimmering aurora around Earth, repelled all non-terrestrial matter with gentle but irresistible force. The ship settled into a stable, silent orbit within the protective bubble, a lone sentinel watching the graveyard of the Cathar fleet drift in the void beyond the shimmering veil. Debris glittered like malevolent stars, the shattered remnants of crystalline arrogance. Inside the ship, the silence was different, not the suffocating silence of grief, but the heavy, electric silence of aftermath, of revelation, of a burden accepted. Captain Aris Thorne stood at the main viewport, his reflection ghostly against the swirling blues and greens of the planet below. Earth, not a wasteland, a forge, and they were its latest, most volatile creation. Dr. Elara Vance approached, holding a data slate that glowed with complex energy, readouts. Her face was pale, etched with exhaustion, but her eyes held a new profound understanding. The resonance, it's stabilizing, she said softly. The planetary structures, they're integrating the energy from the Cathar weapons. The debris, even the Veln biosignatures we picked up near Helios. It's all being refined. Recycled. Thorne didn't turn. Refined into what, Elara? Into us, she whispered, the words hanging in the air like a prophecy. The energy signatures, they're syncing with human biosignatures, not just on the ship, everywhere, on Earth, in the colonies. It's like the Forge is recognizing its own, amplifying us, adapting us. She touched her own chest, where a faint, warm hum seemed to resonate beneath her skin. We're not just on the Forge, Aris. We are the Forge. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just surviving the galaxy's horrors. They were being transformed by the very world the galaxy had scorned. The Deathworlder resilience wasn't just toughness. It was the first stage of an ancient planetary-scale metamorphosis. A new alert chimed on the bridge console. Not Cathar, not Velen. Something else. Massive. Approaching fast from the outer rim. Thorne's blood ran cold. The Veln, the swarm had sensed the cataclysm. The destruction of the Cathar fleet. The surge of raw planetary energy. It was a beacon. A feast. The Velen didn't care about order or chaos. They consumed, and Earth pulsing with unprecedented power was the ultimate prize. On the viewscreen, the void darkened. Not with ships, but with a living shadow. A billion biomechanical horrors, each a nightmare of chitin and corrosive acid, converging on the Sol system like a tide of ravenous locusts. They ignored the shattered Cathar wrecks. Their collective consciousness, a hive mind of pure hunger, was fixed solely on the glowing blue marble at the center of the resonance field. They're not stopping, the sensor officer breathed, voice trembling. They're diving in. The leading edge of the Veln swarm hit the resonant dome. Instead of being repelled like the Cathar, they screamed. A psychic shriek of agony and confusion that echoed even through the ship's hull. The resonance field didn't just disrupt crystalline order. It vibrated at a frequency that unraveled the Veln's biomechanical cohesion. Chet. Cracked. Acidic blood boiled, neural clusters fried, thousands of Veln disintegrated on contact. But the swarm was vast, billion strong. The losses were insignificant. They adapted. The leading elements, driven mad by the pain, began to change. Their forms mutated, becoming denser, more resistant, their bioelectric fields shifting to counter the resonance. They weren't being stopped. They were being tempered. And they were learning. They're evolving through the field. Elara cried, her fingers flying over her console. The resonance is acting like a filter, a crucible. Only the strongest, most adaptable Vel are getting through, and they're coming out worse. The first wave of mutated Velen breached the dome, not as a disorganized horde, but as a coordinated armored spearhead. They slammed into the Mars Fury's shields with terrifying force. The ship shuddered, alarms blaring anew. Shields at 40%, the engineer yelled. They're chewing through like it's paper. Corsum's mind raced. Fight them head on. The Fury was a match for one or two, maybe. Not thousands. Not an endless swarm. The planetary defense was powerful, but it was passive. A shield, not a sword. It could hold, but it couldn't win. The Velwood would keep coming, keep adapting, until they overwhelmed it or found a way to consume the source. He looked at Earth. at the impossible structures humming beneath the crust, at the resonance field that was part of him, part of every human. The Forge needed a smith, a hand to wield the hammer. Elara, Thorne said, his voice suddenly calm, resolute. Can we interface with it? With the Forge? Elara's eyes widened. The energy signatures, they're resonating with our neural patterns. It's possible. But it's dangerous, Aris. We don't understand it. It could burn out our minds, or worse, consume us. Thorne looked at the viewscreen. At the mutated Velen tearing at his ship. At the endless swarm beyond. He thought of Helios drift, of the Cathar's casual genocide, of the billions on Earth. Unaware they stood on the anvil of creation. He thought of the scars on his own body, the scars on his soul, the scars on his world, all forged in fire. Some things, Thorne said, a grim determination settling over him like armor, are worth the burn. He strode to the engineering bay, where the ship's main power conduit ran. A thick cable humming with the stolen energy of a dozen dead stars and now the faint echo of Earth's resonance. He ripped open the access panel. Raw energy arced, singing his skin. Elara, route all non-essential power to the main conduit. Link it to the planetary resonance frequency. Give me a direct neural interface. Aris. No, Elara protested, rushing after him. The feedback. Do it, Thorne roared, his eyes blazing with the same fire that had erupted from the Mariana Trench. This is why we're here. This is what the Forge made us for. Tears streamed down Elara's face, but she nodded, her fingers flying over a secondary console. Linking. Now. Thorne grabbed the exposed conduit. Agony. Pure, white-hot agony seared through his nervous system. It felt like his bones were turning to glass, his blood to molten metal. He screamed, but the sound was lost in the roar of the Forge within his mind. He saw Earth's history flash before him. The asteroid impacts, the ice ages, the supervolcanoes, the relentless pressure that had shaped life, that had shaped him. He felt the planet's pain, its rage, its ancient, slumbering power. He felt the Velen, a cancer, a devourer, an insult to the very concept of creation. He didn't fight the pain. He embraced it. He became the conduit. The hammer. On the bridge, the viewscreen flickered. The resonant dome around Earth didn't just shimmer anymore. It pulsed with Thorne's heartbeat. It roared with his rage. The energy field intensified, not just repelling but lashing out. Tendrils of pure resonant force, visible as crackling white lightning, shot out from the dome, seeking the Velen swarm. Where the Cathar had been shattered by dissonance, the Velen were unmade. The resonant energy didn't just disrupt their biology, it vibrated at the fundamental frequency of their very atoms, causing them to fly apart in silent, spectacular bursts of light and vapor. The mutated spearhead disintegrated. The swarm recoiled, the hive mind shrieking in collective terror. But Thorne was fading. Blood trickled from his nose, his ears, his skin was pale, almost translucent. The Forge was consuming him, using his life force as fuel. Aris, Elara screamed, rushing to the engineering bay. She saw him, barely conscious, fused to the conduit, his body a conduit for planetary fury. You have to let go. You'll die. Thorne's eyes, burning with an inner light, met hers. Tell them, he gasped, his voice raw. Tell them, Earth isn't a wasteland. It's the anvil, and we are the stars it forges. With the last of his strength, he pushed. Not just his energy, but his will, his defiance, his love for the scarred, beautiful, impossible world below. He channeled everything, every loss, every scar, every ounce of human resilience into the Forge. The resonance field exploded outwards, not as a dome but as a wave. A spherical shockwave of pure, creative, destructive energy that expanded at light speed. It washed over the remaining Cathar wrecks, reducing them to harmless dust. It engulfed the Velen swarm. Billions of biomechanical horrors didn't just die, they were transmuted. Their matter, their energy, was absorbed, refined, and woven into the expanding wave. The wave didn't stop at the Sol system. It kept going, out into the galaxy. A silent, invisible pulse of resonant energy carrying the signature of Earth, the signature of humanity, the signature of the Forge. On the bridge of the Mars Fury, Elara watched Thorne slump, lifeless, against the conduit. She wept. But then she felt it, a warmth spreading through her, through the ship, through the very air. The resonance wasn't gone. It was everywhere. And it was changing. Years later, the galaxy is different. The Velen swarm is gone, not destroyed but transformed. Scattered remnants, no longer ravenous, but docile. Even symbiotic, found orbiting certain stars, their biomatter now fertile ground for new strange ecosystems. The Cathar hegemony is shattered, its survivors scattered, their philosophy of sterile order broken by the revelation of a universe far more chaotic, far more alive than they ever imagined. They whisper a new name for Earth now, not Kavathol but Cathar Val, a heart of creation. Humanity thrives, not as the galaxy's underdogs, but as its unexpected guardians. Their colonies bloom, not just on asteroids and moons, but on worlds once deemed too hostile, too unstable. They don't just survive these worlds, they awaken them. Wherever humans settle, subtle energy signatures emerge. Ancient planetary forges, dormant for eons, begin to hum back to life, resonating with the human presence. The galaxy is slowly, quietly being reforged. Dr. Elara Vance stands on a balcony overlooking a city built into the caldera of a once dormant volcano on a world called Viridia. The air is thick with the scent of alien blossoms and the low, comforting hum of the planetary resonance, a hum that echoes the one she feels in her own bones. She wears a simple pendant, a shard of crystalline Cathar hull fused with a piece of Vel chitin, smoothed by time and the gentle energy of the Forge. She looks up at the stars, not with fear but with quiet understanding. The scars of Earth are not just on the land or on the people, they are written in the fabric of the galaxy itself. The aliens called Earth a wasteland. They were wrong. It was the anvil, and humanity is the hammer. And the forging has only just begun.